I just wanted to let everyone in the room and for the participants on Zoom and those watching the recording that this is not a regular meeting of the Master Plan Committee, as members have not been sworn in yet. This meeting is strictly for informational purposes only to introduce the master plan and timeline. No votes will be taken tonight. Okay, so with that said, if you guys want to begin your presentation, this is SERPED, members from SERPED, our regional planning agency.
Great, thank you everyone. So my name is Lizette Gonzalez. I'm the Director of Economic and Community Development at SERPED. I'm joined by
Chris Welch, Principal Planner at SERPED.
Nice
to meet you guys.
So we are your core leadership group for the Acushnet Master Plan. We're very excited to kind of kick things off, get things started. We've been working in the background for quite a few months now just on gathering existing conditions, putting things together, really setting the stage for what is going to be the next 6 months and public engagement. So I did want to highlight the second page of the agenda that you all received, which had some kind of just introductory project information, a very rough timeline of the master plan process. This is going to be about a year and a half if we count the existing conditions work that we've completed over the last month, over the last few months. So right now, we're at the discovery stage of the master plan. We'll be working in earnest to get the discovery workshop off the ground, the community survey, establishing the master plan committee, and really working on developing those shared goals and vision. What comes next, you'll see over time, is developing those strategies, having that peer review of what those are, and then finally drafting that plan so it's ready for public consumption by December 2025. I want to highlight that the master plan process has multiple goals. Of this includes obviously creating the master plan itself, but it also will produce an open space and recreation plan in addition to a water resource management plan. So these plans will all achieve distinct sets of goals and set out these strategies for the town over the next 10 years, hopefully. And they're all related to these core set of topics. We're thinking land use, housing, economic development, open space and recreation, natural and cultural resources, transportation, and services and facilities. So it's a lot to cover in a single plan, and there's a lot of planning that goes into that, which is why we've kind of pulled it out into 3 separate ones. Below we have some kind of just a snapshot of the funding sources that are being utilized to produce all this work. I gotta say, kudos to Acushnet for being so proactive in getting all this funding and making sure that this plan achieves so many things at once. When you're doing a public engagement process as robust as you have during a master plan, it's really helpful to get all these other things under the same umbrella. So with that, any questions that I can answer about the master plan process?
What's the timeline on each stage?
So right now we're looking at the first 6 months is establishing public engagement. So over the next 6 months we'll have one tabling event per month in town. It can be at the library, the COA, we'll be attending a PTA meeting, and announcing those as we go along. We're hoping to have those fully uploaded to the website as to, you know, where we're going to be, when we're going to be there by the end of this month.
Okay, so I guess that maybe just a little bit, you get economic development, you get open space. These all going in stages, or they all working in concert together to get it all done at one time all together?
Yeah, so for the purpose of kind of organizing that discussion, we're gonna have deep dive sessions, as we're calling them, in the master plan committee meeting, where we'll go through the specific data for land use, housing, and all those other elements that you just discussed. So for example, for the open space and recreation plan, we've set aside a date with the master plan committee at one of your regular meetings where that project group will come in and talk to you all about what open space you have in town, maybe talk to you guys about what the gaps are. Do you have access to your waterfronts? Do you need more? How can we get there? So all of that discussion is going to be organized through the Master Plan Committee. And really our outreach to the public is making sure that they know this plan is going on, they know where to get resources, and they have the resources to provide feedback to us, whether it be at in-person events, online, really whatever way we can get people to respond and provide information about where their aspirations are for Acushnet. Does that answer your question? Great. All right, so I'm going to dive right into the Discovery Workshop boards. So I do have one change. The Discovery Workshop is going to take place January 29th. That is a Wednesday from 5 to 7 at the public library. There was some scheduling conflicts that took place that we realized after we set that date. So I just want to make sure that that is announced, official with you guys. That is open to the public. It is an open house style meeting, so during that time we'll have informational boards, a table where we can all talk about what's going on and feedback, but it's meant to be very informal. If you can pop in for a half hour, 15 minutes, any time is appreciated, and we want to make it flexible for everyone in town. I know that we can't deliberate at this meeting here tonight, so when it comes to these Discovery Workshop boards, I want to make sure that more than anything, they meet the expectations of what we're looking to discuss. If I can get this to be the right page. Okay, here we go. So at this Discovery Workshop, we'll be going over again that timeline, letting people know what to expect. Giving them some idea of what we're dealing with when it comes to Acushnet, because you can't plan without knowing the data, the trends, who your audience is. So who really lives in Acushnet, what's that profile look like? And so we give them some ideas about what that looks like and what the data is telling us, what they can expect for engagement, and who their project team is. We also will provide information along those topics that I mentioned earlier: land use, housing, economic development, so on and so forth. And that is usually coupled with a map that gives you some spatial data. For example, this will tell you where open space is in town, as well as some fast facts about the community. We'll also go over land use data, how important that is, how that might impact the way, development comes into town, whether it be preservation or industrial growth. So using that as a way to bounce forward and have discussions about other different topics in the community. We'll talk about economic development. One of the things that we've talked about during the course of setting this plan up is really thinking about what economic development looks like in town. We have, industrial all the way down to your small business and supporting commercial growth. So one way to think about it, and because of Acushnet's unique history and relationship to agriculture, we wanted to incorporate that as a part of that discussion, recognizing that people identify with that and love that element of the community. So we want to make sure that's something that we can grow sustainably into the future, even if farms are not operating in the same way that they used to, say, 50 to 100 years ago. So just a snapshot of these kinds of boards that we'll have at the Discovery Workshop. I encourage you to, take some time, look at them. If you have any questions or comments regarding these, we are happy to, entertain any ideas or thoughts. We're putting a deadline just January 17th, just so that we have time to incorporate it all, print everything, put everything into production. So that's where we are at with the Discovery Workshop. We're in really good shape. We've scheduled with the library, and we're really looking forward to welcoming everyone to that open house meeting. Any questions regarding the Discovery Workshop?
Just making sure the slides that you're showing there are not the ones that were printed out for us or in the email, so.
Yes, so these actually are additional. The first ones are really just introductory, kind of informational, but these are the more hard data that will be presented at the Discovery Workshop.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
just making sure.
Yeah.
Are you gonna want comments on those as well?
If you guys have any, it's nothing official. It's just to make sure, what we want to do is before we have these workshops, make sure they're being vetted by the master plan committee to make sure that they're accurate and we're asking the right questions.
Okay, can you send those out after this?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. I'm going to hand it over to Chris to talk a little bit about our master plan survey and all the public engagement that we're doing in that regard. You want me to pull up?
Yeah, do you mind? Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Lizeth. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Chris Welch. I work at Serped. So Lizeth talked briefly about the sort of quantitative side of the data and the needs assessment that we've done in the background so far. This general survey is the qualitative side, so it's getting the perspective of Acushnet residents on a variety of different topics. So that includes those 7 different elements within the master plan process. So your land use, your economic development, housing, and so on. So just to quickly go through, this is a draft survey that we have, and one that we would also be looking for comments for, just to truth check us, see if we're asking the right questions. As I'm scrolling through, if you see anything of note, just let me know. These are just general demographic questions. We ask for folks to kind of rank which of the 7 topics that they kind of are more interested in. And then we go into more specific element type questions. So like here, land use and zoning. And then we get into more like economic development and housing. And if we haven't already, we definitely will send a link out for folks to be able to take a look at it and comment on. So if you do have any, feel free to let Victoria know and she will let us know. And we'll make sure to get those incorporated. I think the plan is to, yes?
I was going to say, it came across in the email, so you were able to do it already and go through it. The one thing I would say is if you have a little bit more explanation of what each one of these actually is before you ask somebody to vote and prioritize.
Do you mean for the elements?
Yes.
Like, okay, yeah, gotcha. Just kind of explain exactly what
if
they
you're
are.
sitting there, it's like, well, they may not have any idea what 3 out of those 5 elements or 7 elements are, and then
For sure.
prioritize.
For sure. Yeah, we'll definitely keep that in mind and incorporate that into the survey as well. Just provide definitions on some of this stuff too, because the regular person might not necessarily know exactly what natural and cultural resources are. It's such a broad topic. We'll definitely include that in the survey. So feel free to take a look at this up until, I think the deadline's 17th. Like I said, truth check us. If we're not asking the right questions, please let us know. So in addition to this, we've also created and made live a kind of intro survey for folks, just so we can get a better feel for what the perceptions of residents in the Acushnet are. And I'd like to say too that the response rate on it has been fantastic. I think we got about 120 responses within 2 days.
Awesome.
Yeah, which for a small town, that's fantastic. That's really great. So props to Acushnet residents for coming out and filling the survey out. I think we're above 180 responses right now since the release. So
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah. So I think the plan is we're probably going to close it around the time of the workshop, around the time where we make the main survey live.
Okay.
That way that we don't oversaturate the town with too many surveys and get people confused. So yeah, that survey was under 10 questions. It was more general, like what do you like about Acushnet? What do you kind of see for the town over the next 10 years? I'd say overall the sentiment is very positive from what I saw from responses. There is definitely some important topics that were brought up, like economic development, like wanting to see more retail commercial development, as well as like agritourism and also land preservation as well. So that was still is a very successful survey that we've got out right now. So it's helping to provide more of that qualitative data for us. And in addition to that, we also had a department head survey for Acushnet town staff that I think we've gotten most of the department heads to take at this point. So
Awesome.
yeah, so we've gotten some really good responses on that to help fill in the gaps of what a Acushnet resident might not know on the town side. So that's been really helpful as well. Any questions to this point? Okay. So I think we're gonna look at our story map that we have.
Yeah. We can just stay up here together.
Okay, yeah.
All right. So this is where we get into the deep dive portion of things, where we'll kind of take a closer look at those specific topics, give you guys some information about these topics, and kind of just hopefully have a discussion about some of those things and be able to start gathering feedback to really start shaping those strategies and those goals that were really going to be the meat of the Acushnet Master Plan. So this month's topic is focused around land use, housing, and economic development. When it comes to, When it comes to zoning and land use in Acushnet, Acushnet has a very small land use and zoning map. There are just a few categories. Most of the uses in town are focused on residential use. There are some, areas that are dedicated for commercial activity, industrial activity, and that's where you'll find a lot of that, small businesses, your PJ Keatings. So it's smart, right? We're thinking about where we want to have growth, where we should put additional growth, if any at all, because that's always a conversation to be had as well. And then, this is one of the great, I think, charts of this section in particular, where 36% of Acushnet is residential, and the next largest include developable land, vacant land, as well as other. So there, if you notice there, when we're looking at here, mixed use, for example, where you might have those small commercial areas, small businesses, it accounts for a very small portion of what is land use and zoning in Acushnet. So this tells us a little bit as well. When we attend the Discovery Workshop, we'll have some information about tax revenues and what that breakdown is. A lot of it shows is that, even though there is a split tax rate in Acushnet, unfortunately, the burden and most of the revenues for the town do come from residents. And what can we do, thinking in the long term, to alleviate that? So some of the guiding questions when we think about land use and zoning, we've pulled some out here. We've taken a look at all your past planning in Acushnet. The 2008 master plan looked at reconciling new uses in the zoning table along with, effective bylaws that have already been active for quite some time. Some of the questions that we were asking ourselves was, should Acushnet consider a zoning recodification to really bring a lot of these bylaws in harmony with one another, update to, new state standards, and make sure that they're not, in conflict with one another because something was made in the 1970s versus, 2020. Yeah.
Sorry if I can interject. I know our town clerk is starting to work on that. I think it's like a multi-phase kind of project.
Okay,
but
fantastic.
it is something that's like being worked on.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
I know some towns don't choose to do it on their own and will actually, look for a consultant to do that. So the fact that you guys are already taking it on, even if it's in phases, is great. One of the other questions that we were thinking about as we looked at Acushnet's land use and zoning, are there areas in town that the Acushnet should acquire for the purpose of preservation, given how important it is to residents in the community?
I have a quick question on this. When you're going through your guiding questions, like you just, and I'm on the finance committee too, so this is drawing it in. I know where our shortages are and our tax revenue comes from, but a lot of the residents don't.
Yeah.
And as soon as you start talking about economic growth, nobody wants the town to change, everybody wants to stay rural, but they also don't want their taxes to go up.
Right.
So when you're putting these guiding questions out there, is it feasible for you to also include items like you just did about what our current tax revenue base is? And like you said, it falls on the homeowners. So as rates and everything continue to go up, the homeowners have to expect that their taxes are also going to go up on a regular basis.
Right.
unless there's a change in how our tax revenue base is looked at in the future.
Yeah, we definitely have, I think later in this presentation, a pretty striking graph that shows the proportion of the different, how the tax rates are broken up, whether it's commercial or residential, compared to you guys' neighboring communities as well. So you can definitely see, once we get there, that the tax rate, or sorry, the tax burden definitely falls more onto the residential side as opposed to commercial compared to the other nearby like communities.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that that information is out to the people that are actually going to be looking at it and
For sure.
making their decisions off of it.
For sure. And this is going to be made public as well, so it's definitely going to be accessible on the website. We definitely want residents to be able to, actually, do you mind moving to the map part of it?
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to be soliciting feedback through this crowdsourcing map as well. So residents can go in, leave a comment and say like, oh, I want more retail space at this particular part of town or something like that. That way we can get some really great qualitative feedback that way. And having some of the information that we're going to have later in the presentation as well could help inform more residents about like, okay, maybe we do need some more retail commercial growth just so that we can lower our tax rate.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we're definitely cognizant of that, I would say.
Because I personally myself, I'd love to find some spot where we could put our own Acushnet industrial park style in there and get some of the larger businesses in, because retail space, while it's great and Main Street could be filled up, if Main Street's filled up, it's only a drop in the bucket for us.
Yeah.
So, sorry.
Do you have an area where you would consider?
Personally, I don't, but I'm certainly open for it. The
Mhm.
question is can we get the rest of the town open for it? Because everybody wants it, but nobody wants it next to them.
Right.
So I don't know where our open tracks are that you were showing, and that's why the map will come into place, and also the explanation to the residents about why it may be important for them to look at changing how our makeup is in the
Yeah,
future.
yeah, for sure. I believe the zooming in, industrial land and use is currently concentrated in this area here in the southern part
Right.
of town. So we can take a closer look at the map and see what other vacant land there is surrounding that area. If it's zoned industrial, if it's zoned something else, would that mean a zoning change that we could recommend through the plan? Obviously, it would still have to go through the public process and town meeting, but those are the types of recommendations that we're really hoping to get to through this process, you know, identifying those sites, putting into play all those steps that need to be taken to get it to a place where you could maybe have the Acushnet Business Park in a place that doesn't impact many or any residents.
Right. And I mean, you asked about an area, right? So look at the north, which is closer to me.
Mm-hmm.
You've already got the gas area that's up there. You've got Middle Road or Peckham right at that corner. But it's also very close to 18. You're going right into New Bedford. It doesn't impact a lot of the town itself. It's in a different area with a completely different access to the main thoroughfare. So instead of flooding the whole area with PJ Keating and everything else that's around there now with more industrial, maybe it makes sense to earmark both sides of the town. But I don't know what available land is up in that area or if it's even feasible. But
So there have been some past planning activities like the priority development area plans that have been done pretty recently and updated that help to narrow down where particular areas, especially on the town side, that you folks might be interested in doing. And I think in addition to that, having a map like this and having residents be able to point out, we want it kind of here, we can start to triangulate where it makes sense, both on the town side and from a resident's perspective of where that type of development could potentially take place.
perfect. I'll try and keep quiet now, sorry.
No, you're perfect. It's great you're asking questions.
So just to give an example of how to use this map, I just took your comment there about consider spreading, and you can truth check me if this is right, consider spreading industrial growth between the north and south. Just as a point, it's not tied, you know, concretely to this, but a comment like that would be something that's beneficial to add to this map. So that way people can, you know, once you click submit, for example, someone else who's also looking at this, you know, over coffee and breakfast can look at this comment and say, okay, yeah, I agree with that, I like it, and so they can give it a thumbs up. or they can give it a thumbs down, and they can also add an additional comment to that. So we're hoping this is just an online feedback method that people can interact maybe with one another after the workshop. If they're attending the workshop, we can talk all about this and hopefully add to this to be able to create like a concrete feedback method. Yeah. All right, so the last question relating to zoning and land use, and it also, you'll notice, touches across economic development and housing. You'll find this very common theme across the master plan. How can Acushnet manage growth considering service capacity? And we're thinking, water, sewer, transportation, concerns that are already existing. Are there those concerns in town? Where are they, concentrated in, and how can we address them? Some of these may require more in-depth conversations. I'm thinking public works or your highway
Definitely.
department. Those are the experts that for these types of questions are really important to have. So that's why
you
we
talked
put
about
out
the town sewer and water, but that
Mhm.
really is only affects the bottom half of the town. The north
Mhm.
part of it doesn't have town sewer and water.
Is there interest in having town sewer and water?
I
In the
think
north?
the feasibility of it coming up was not cost effective to
Mhm.
begin with.
Okay.
And then when you start looking at what the costs actually were for it from when it started to not only the buy-in for it, but the actual monthly charges for it, I think you'll have a lot of residents that currently have septic and well not interested in
Right.
it. But that's also for existing homes.
Mhm.
For newer homes, especially if you're looking at economic development in the north end, that may be something that has to be looked at and provides a future tie-in as needed.
Mhm. Yeah.
Because if we do get to that nitrogen recovery in all septic systems in the future, if that gets pushed down on us, even though there's no proof that nitrogen is caused by septic systems, $40,000 or $50,000 to upgrade your septic system compared to $20,000 to tie into town sewer and water may not be much of a choice at that point.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure.
Sorry, I said I was going to shut up.
No need.
This is the place to not shut up. We definitely want your feedback on this. So the next section, I got you. The next section we kind of talk about more of a housing perspective as well as demographics. So for folks that didn't know, since 1990, there's been a population increase of roughly 1,000. And let's see, this is a chart kind of showing the growth percentages decade by decade. So the 1990s to 2000, that's how the greatest percentage of population increase. And it's kind of been going up and down. There was still an increase from 2000 to 2010, but it was much less than 1990 to 2000. That rate started to go back up in 2010 to 2020. So this is definitely good to know in terms of what the population growth might look like. And then next up, we've got aging, a trend across the nation, the state, the county, the region, is that the population is aging. We can see here from this chart that the kind of bracket of folks that are 60 and up has increased pretty significantly since 2000. We can also see that the median age has increased by roughly 6 years from 2000 to 2021.
I'm sorry, do you mind just saying what those are out loud? It's just hard to read.
Oh, yeah,
Just
of
for
course.
the public too.
So just looking at the chart here, we can see that the median age in 2000 was the age of 40. This increased to 46 in 2021. Also, an important statistic here is that the population of folks under 20 has decreased by roughly 5% in that same time period, which makes sense. There's a give and take for ages, so that definitely makes sense with the trend that's going on in terms of age. Any questions to this point, too? I know I'm throwing a lot of statistics at you guys, so. So moving on, this kind of same trend on population and aging. We can see here from the school population district-wide, I don't know if that chart incorporates Fairhaven High School as well, because I know you guys have a joint school district, but I know from looking at the statistics that we had, at the very least, the school population between Acushnet Elementary School and middle school has been decreasing. So the middle school it's kind of been a strange seesaw of decreasing and increasing. It actually hasn't changed in 10 years. But if you looked at the year to year, it definitely goes up and down. Acushnet Elementary School definitely saw a decrease in enrollment. But yeah, we'll definitely fix that chart if it does include Fairhaven High School, because we definitely don't want to include that. It's a little tough to tell if an Acushnet resident is going and is counted in there.
We have, I believe it's called school choice here, so they
could go to New Bedford too, right?
Yeah, I think they can go to a variety, so I imagine that's kind of
Old
hard
Colony,
to
Fairhaven, and New Bedford are the main choices. And I mean, you can opt out and pay for your own transportation to go to some of the others, but that takes most of it. In the last few years, we've become the largest town participant for Old Colony.
Gotcha, okay.
So, and I think Fairhaven has been pretty steady, maybe gone up a little bit, but
yeah, we'll definitely take that into account, because we want to make sure we're not counting like outside residents as well in this. But like I said, from what we saw with at least Acushnet Elementary and Acushnet Middle School, between the two of them, Acushnet Middle School hasn't seen too much of a change over the last 10 years, while Acushnet Elementary School has seen a decrease in the student population and enrollment. So looking at the kind of housing types on this map, I know it's kind of tough to see. I apologize, I don't have a mouse. But we can see that the majority of housing types on here are single-family residential. Sorry, I'm trying to make it a little easier for everyone to see. Which is pretty consistent with the region. And let's see. And please stop me if I'm going too fast. So some of the guiding questions we have here, how can Acushnet support seniors to age in place, including through downsizing, due to changing incomes, demand for services? You guys don't have to answer this now. It's more, as it says, kind of guiding questions for folks that are kind of looking in on this. But if you guys do have any insights, definitely appreciate it. Yeah, no worries there. So moving on to question 2, what types of housing should Acushnet pursue to accommodate different resident demographics, including first-time home buyers, young families, and senior residents? Also, one you don't need to answer right now. But
well, I'll tell you right now that the biggest charm, I think, in the town is the fact that we do have that rural nature to it. So considering that our school department is kind of at capacity in terms of everything else, we want to get more people in the town, but it can't be at the expense of the ruralness or overusing our own resources that we have in town, because the expense for trying to change either one of those is going to be a huge obstacle to overcome. So when we're talking about zoning, I don't think you'll have a lot of support for reducing the size of required land in order to build a house. I don't think you're going to have a lot of apartment complex wants or needs for it, regardless of the South Coast rail system coming in. Not only because it takes away from that ruralness, but now you start causing a bigger drain on the resources that are available in the town. So you asked a question, I'm gonna...
No, definitely something important to keep in mind, especially in a small town like Acushnet. Yeah, we'll definitely take that into account. So if there's not any other comments for that particular question, moving on, the 2008 master plan recommended the adoption of cluster developments. Where do you think this could potentially work in town? So this might be one of those housing types that is controversial now, since it was kind of brought up in 2008, but...
Do you mind just kind of explaining what that is?
I think it's kind of, what was your name again? I'm so sorry.
Peter.
I think it's what you were describing, potentially smaller lot sizes in order to fit more homes in a certain geographical area and the like.
It was also something that was brought up in the last town meeting in terms of setting guidelines for new developments to try and create something in the town so that developers couldn't come into town with the concept of we're creating more affordable housing and put up all of these huge things because there's no guidelines in the town. They only have the minimum requirements by the state in order to meet affordable housing.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a,
Are you
The
thinking
town-
like a 40B?
it was one of those, it was blanket. So
I
it
see.
was
Okay.
not only like you're talking about the 40B, but coming up with apartment complexes or other things along those lines.
Mhm.
That there were some guidelines that they had to meet for the town before they could put them in, where right
Right.
now we didn't have any, and that had a lot of positive approval from the constituents in town that were at the meeting, that they did not want to have an open policy when it came to our town and just coming in with that type of development.
Mhm.
So 2008 compared to what it was in well, that was just a few months ago, so.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. So specifically, the cluster developments, you can have, think of it this way, you have like 10 acres, you can put 10 houses on 1 acre each. Cluster development proposes half an acre for each house, and the other half of the 5 acres becomes open space. So that type of cluster development, don't know if it is any more appealing to this type of community.
You still have the same amount of houses in that space, but now you have dedicated open space as long as it's set that way and it can't be developed. Then
Exactly, and that is the sole purpose of that type of development style. You know, we recognize subdivisions are really popular in a lot of our communities, and you know, instead of taking it all and just using it for housing construction, which you know you could do, and it's a lot of communities do that. There's a public benefit to having open space trails or expanding your network, what have you. And if that is of value, it is a path for a lot of communities to take.
well, it makes it easier for the developers too, because now they only have to develop half of the overall space instead
Yeah,
of all of it,
yeah,
so it
that
costs us
too.
less.
Yeah. So is that concept, you think, maybe more appealing?
Yes, because again, you're not increasing the amount of population that you would under the current guidelines for it. Right?
Mhm.
You still have 10 houses on 10 acres.
Mhm.
The difference now is you've got 5 of those acres dedicated to open space that can't be developed on it, you know, preserving the town.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I think there's different types of it as well, like an OSRD, so an open space residential design, like that's a good one. What's the other one? It's conservation subdivision. So there's definitely like precedents out there to fulfill that goal of not only producing more housing, but also preserving open space simultaneously. But yeah, that's definitely something good to know for our purposes as well, that there might be interest in town on that front. Any other questions to this point or comments? No? Okay. I think we're going to roll into the economic development side here. So just quickly taking a look at some more statistics, how fun. We're going to look at the median household income here. So we can see here that over the last 20 years, Acushnet has seen an increase in its median household income. Is that easy enough to see?
No, but of what percent?
So I can't give you a percentage on this, but essentially it's gone from $51,000 a year to $88,000 a year. So that's roughly a $37,000 increase within 22 years. So pretty significant. It's actually surpassed, or it already had surpassed Bristol County,
Right,
but it's also like more in line with the state median household income.
The numbers are great, but without some type of comparison for it, it means nothing, right?
Mhm.
So in that same time frame, how much have taxes increased percentage-wise? If you put it in a percentage and see, okay, are we on the same trend? Then yes. If we're not on the same trend, then what needs to change so that we get there?
For sure.
Because again, that great, it's gone up 37,000. Everybody's richer. No, we're not.
For sure. I think at the very least you can glean that there has been an increase, and I think it's good to know too. Like we have, I'm thinking of Carver specifically. So if we looked at Carver for this chart, you would see that their median household income was going up, and then it suddenly went down and stagnated for a bit. So we can definitely kind of tie this information into increasing tax rates and stuff like that to try and get a bit more information out of it. But I'd say it's just more of to get a better understanding for residents who are coming into this with fresh eyes, who might not know the background of what the median household income might have been in 2000.
You talk about Carver, but were you showing a graph that showed 10 and 12 year increments, or was it smaller that showed that bump and decline and
It
stagnation?
was, I think it was 10-year increments or something. So it's just important to note for context, I think, in this
Yeah.
instance. But yeah.
And we can get the average tax bill per family over the year to show that comparison too.
For sure, yeah.
To drive your point home, I think that is a really good way to give people some perspective as to how things
and look at the inflation numbers over that time frame too, because
Yeah.
taxes are one thing, but the cost of everything else has to come into play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For sure. So this is a breakdown of household income. We can see here that the about 61% of Acushnet residents earn more than $75,000, and that's of 2022. And also, for reference for folks, our sources are the 10-year census and the 5-year American Community Survey. So that's where most of these statistics, if not all of them, are coming from. Let's see here. So moving on, also looking at housing prices, we can see here that Acushnet's housing prices have been increasing and are pretty in line with the county, but still definitely below the state. For example, in 2016, the median sale price for a home, so that includes condos and single-family homes, was roughly $275,000, and in 2023 it was $410,000. So yeah. Let's see here. So looking at industry employment, we can see here that construction and healthcare industries are the top largest employers in Acushnet, and that's also as of 2023. So construction jobs, roughly 38% of industry employment in town, healthcare and social assistance, 20%. So the next one was accommodation and food services, and that was 15%. Any questions on these? I know I'm going kind of fast on.
No, you'll get these to us. The slides so we
Absolutely,
can see.
yeah. And these will be made public too, so residents will be able to take a look as well.
I'll email the link out to you guys.
Because you know you can't see it.
Yeah.
You guys are flying blind right now. I'm so sorry. Like I kind of said, we have a chart here kind of showing the proportion of tax levy by use as well. Like I said, it's kind of striking, especially in terms of the commercial tax levy for the town of Acushnet. It's on the lower side compared to the neighboring communities of Acushnet. So we have Fairhaven, Freetown, Mattapoisett, and Rochester. So we can see here that Acushnet, its commercial tax levy by use is only 2.9%. And compared to like a Fairhaven, they have 16.7%, or Freetown has a 6.3%. So Mattapoisett, Rochester, Acushnet kind of in the same bracket there for commercial, or the proportion of tax levy for commercial uses. So this is definitely stuff we want to highlight for residents that might not be aware of that important, like what tax statistics are kind of going on in the modern day and all of that.
How other towns are doing it.
How other towns are doing it. That's always the first question is, what about my neighbor, right? So
It's important to have perspective.
exactly. You're just going to be shooting in the dark if you don't know what is going on with everyone else, right? So I think the most important and striking statistic of this, though, is that 85% of the tax levy is going to residential in Acushnet. So that's pretty significant, like we were saying before. And then we've got some guiding questions here for economic development as well. As we previously said, in the kind of intro survey that we have done, agritourism is definitely a big topic that had come up. So the guiding question we have here, yes?
I'm sorry. Do you mind just explaining what that is for the public?
Of course.
Some of these terms that I feel like,
For sure. We'll make sure to include that in the survey as well. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
So essentially, agritourism is a means of like different types of activities that folks wouldn't necessarily assume with like normal agricultural like jobs, like someone harvesting wheat or something. So for example, like giving a tour of a farm, or like a mock day on a farm or something for a customer coming in, or like a cranberry bog tour, for example. Like I know they do that a lot in this area. or potentially spending a night at the farm as like an Airbnb or something like that.
Wedding venues.
Wedding
okay.
venue. It's
Yep.
it's a pretty broad like means of describing all of these different activities. But yeah, we'll definitely get a definition in this and in the survey, so folks are a little bit more knowledgeable about what we're talking about here, so we're not confusing anyone. But yeah, how can Acushnet support the long-term sustainability of agricultural activities in town? Think agritourism, like I just said, potentially farm stands, or any innovative best practices that may have come up through work in town or just working with other folks. Like with the ED question, or sorry, with the housing questions, you guys might not have an answer now, but we're definitely posting this for the public as well.
Well, think of it, we're still a right to farm community, right? But
Mhm.
most of our residents wouldn't even know how to do it. So how about some type of benefit for the working farms that are out there for holding some type of teachable classes, whether it be how, I want to raise chickens so that I can have eggs, or I want to plant a garden, but they have no idea how to do it.
For sure.
Right? So if they offer something to help the community out in order to be able to take advantage of that and be more self-sustainable, more of an agricultural community, then how can we help benefit those farmers for doing that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely a good idea. Any other comments? Moving on to the next question, how can Acushnet support further commercial or industrial development in order to diminish the residential tax burden? So you were ahead of the game there, my friend. But yeah, so we definitely touched on that already, but are there any additional comments on that kind of topic? All right, moving on. What strategy should Acushnet adopt to create a more vibrant Main Street? So that was kind of touched on already, but what kinds of potential changes that you guys might want to see or have heard that residents might want to see would be really fruitful as well?
I know growing up down the Cape, having something that was Old Town School, walkable, created some type of community that was out there instead of just parking lot building. I don't know if it's feasible if we're looking at redoing Main Street, but you get some type of that shopping community, restaurants all in one that becomes a go-to type of area for recreation, for eating. It creates a little bit more of a personality for the town.
So make it more pedestrian friendly, safer, probably.
But also, Main Street is a destination, not just a road.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
I just want to mention that we do have a project going on where MassDOT is designing like an update to Main, actually to South Main. So I think it's important to kind of keep that in mind as we move forward with the master plan.
Mhm.
That's also going on. So if we have any ideas for that, that would just kind of be good.
For
Sure.
South Main
Love it.
Street was where I was thinking too.
Oh, yeah,
Doesn't
yeah.
make sense on North Main Street.
Yeah, well, yeah, I just want to specify, but yes, because that is state owned right now, that roadway. So that's also important to keep in mind. But
Yeah.
For sure.
they have different requirements and stuff. But yeah.
Yeah, I think we actually walked down South Main Street for our site visits. We also did,
Mhm.
I don't think we mentioned that, we also did site visits, so we came and visited the town at various places. I know we looked at different preserved lands. We even hiked a trail behind like the COA, so that was really interesting, being able to see the Acushnet River. But yeah, it was definitely interesting walking down South Main Street because I think it takes you right to the asphalt plant too, if you walk far enough. We were crazy and weren't paying attention to how far the walk was, but we eventually made our way down that way.
We did walk that.
Yeah, we walked all the way down and walked all the way back. But yeah, just ideas surrounding Main Street, I think, are really good to know in terms of like what residents might want to see.
Well, I know if having Main Street, South Main Street, that section of it that's state owned is an obstacle. We have been kicking around over the past couple of years the concept of taking over that road from the state, which would mean we'd have to now be in charge of the paving and everything else, and with PJ Keating and their trucks running through it, it's a little bit more of a burden than what we want to take on.
For
But
sure.
if there's a trade-off for better economic development for it, it may may be something that's feasible that we'll look at too.
Yeah, that's definitely good to know that that idea might be getting kicked around. Especially that could be potentially a future like strategy in the master plan if there's enough interest surrounding it. But yeah. Any other questions, comments? Okay. I think that was it. We just have at the very end just a snapshot of the same crowdsourcing map that we've kind of shown throughout, in case anyone just wants to put a general comment that might not have to do with those specific guiding questions that we had. So yeah, now I'm gonna let Lizette take it away.
Yeah, so that is kind of like a snapshot of what our deep dives will look like moving forward. Next month, we're going to be talking about transportation, services, and facilities. So if there's anything that specifically you guys would like to know about that, we have some, existing conditions like the top crash locations in town, kind of like heat maps of where the most activity takes place. But if there's something specific that you would like us to look into before that meeting, we'd be happy to look into it and bring it so that way we can kind of share that information and discuss it a little further. But yeah.
These are transportation services and facilities. Okay,
So the state of facilities, again, infrastructure is a good one, like water sewer capacity. ADA accessibility is a big topic for that chapter as well. Yeah, it's really broad, but like I said, if there's something that you guys would like us to look into ahead of time, we're happy to do so.
awesome. Thank you.
So that concludes all our materials for tonight. Thank you again for having us. I think we got us out just in time.
Yeah, sorry I dragged it on a little bit.
No, it's there. It's fine. A lot of food for thought when we get going. So.
Yeah, definitely. And I will make sure to send all of these materials to you. They will also be available on the website. And again, January 29th at the library, 5 to 7.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.